This
session.
conference will.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, okay. So first speaker will be Tejus Venkatesh. He is a robotic process automation evangelist and practitioner with over half a decade experience in implementing various RPA technologies. He has experience in pre-sales, business analysis, and implementation. He has played a key role in growing a strong UiPath team in India. Tejas help in enabling UiPath customers and partners in India and APAC region in ensuring quality deliverable. He promotes automation first mindset not only in enterprise businesses but also in NGOs and universities. He will be talking about hyper-automation. So in this in-depth session, Tejas would be dimensifying concept of hyper-automation for us. Then our next speaker will be Abhinav Savarwal, who will be talking about how you can switch careers in RPA. This is a must session for non-technical and developers alike. Anyone who wishes to dip their feet in field of RPA should watch this session. So before we start with the session, there are some rules that I would like to read in front of you people. Speaker session is expected to be of 30 minutes and there will be 10 minutes question and answer session at the end. Please post your questions in the chat window. If you would like to ask a question at the end instead of typing in the chat window, please message the host, that is me. If time permits, there will be a chance for you to ask. The session may be recorded for internal use and later publications whenever applicable. If you do not agree for recording the session, please sign up from the event. For privacy and other reasons, presentation and recordings are not being shared except when approved for publication in the last stages. You may introduce yourself in the chat window, but do not self-promote or advertise. So I would like to call Tejas for the to start
Okay,
the.
hold on.
Great. So this is Tejus. I request everybody to be on mute till the time I have. And also let me start sharing my screen. Great. Hope you can see my screen now. Namaste everyone again. I hope you are staying safe. I think the paramount importance is to stay safe these days. It's unprecedented times that we are in. So I hope you are all taking care of yourself and your family. Today I'm going to talk about a terminology which is not too old, right? It should not be more than 6 to 8 months old. But there is a lot of importance and we should know this, especially for people who are in the space of digital transformation, who are in the process automation space, who are in the space of business process automation. Whether you use RPA, whether you use software integrations, irrespective of that, you need to know about this word, which is hyper automation. So let me start. And before I start, I hope everybody knows RPA, but this is a quick picturization. Cool. So those small minion-like creatures that you saw is the robots that we see in RPA, not the ones that you see in Terminators and the scary ones. Okay, so we'll talk about the hyper automation trend. What does that hyper automation mean to all of us? Is it same as RPA? Is it something very different than RPA? Is it RPA on steroids? Is it something to do with AI? Is it something to do with machine learning? We'll speak on that. But but hyper automation is officially the number one technology trend, strategic technology trend, according to Gartner for this year, right? And then this was published even before the COVID pandemic hit us. But after that, it is gaining even further importance because automation is something has become like a boardroom conversation. Every single CXO of companies across the world are talking about automation, but not just as automation as RPA, but they are trying to have a much larger picture, right? Much larger picture of moving away from a task automation to process automation, to templatized automation, to automation across multiple functions, not just in finance, not just in HR, but something which can be like a gigabot, which can work across borders, across geographies, right? Those are two different things. One, we are talking that hyperautomation is being called as the technology trend for the year, and because of automation, because of this pandemic, we are realizing that software automation is the strategy, is something that is going to have the highlight and spotlight in every boardroom, in every CXO conversation. So two different things before we get in, right? And now we talk what's hyper automation, right? And this is our interpretation of hyper automation. What we think is that hyper automation is RPA gaining ability to do more stuff, right? To more number of processes, to increase the complexity of the types of automations that you could do, to increase the efficiency of your automations, to increase your efficiency, the speed of development of your automation, to increase the efficiency in deploying the solutions across multiple hundreds and multiple thousands of robots, of computers, right? So that being said, hyperautomation in our interpretation is RPA at the center and having supplementing and complementing technologies which will help you achieve more, to get more processes automated, right? In a massive scale, not just two robots or three robots that you've been doing until now, but at much larger scale, right? So all the technologies that you see on the screen, whether it is AI, whether it is native integrations, whether it is long running workflows or analytics or process mining, all of these things are going to be part of hyper automation, but they are going to be surrounded around a very strong fundamental RPA in place, right? So is it cognitive automation? Yes, because it is going to be RPA along with the help of AI, ability to see what's there on the screen, understanding the context, understanding sentiments. Yes, that's cognitive automation. Is it intelligent automation? Yes, it is intelligent because it can help you identify process by process mining, right? Is it something to do with analytics? Yes, RPA and analytics. So but RPA becomes the core and the fundamentals in hyper automation, right? So it is your existing RPA having the ability to do more types of automation, right? You increase the scope. Assume in your current organization where you're automating, you would probably be automating about 80% of the task, and the 20% of the task is being manually done because it was complex, because the data was not in electronic format. Maybe the decision was complex. For example, if I should give loan to person X, that's not a simple if or else decision, right? It needs much more complex logic to be behind. It needs pattern recognition. It needs historic data. it needs predictive analysis. So you could automate those complex types of processes as well in hyper automation. That's the logic. And you do all these things more efficiently. Efficient is the word, right? What do you mean by efficiency? Doing the thing right in the first place and doing it at the best way possible, right? Best in terms of execution time, best in terms of your investment, best in terms of your return on investment, all of that, right? That's what is hyper automation from the prism of RPA. Now, at any point in time, if you have any questions, I encourage you to drop that in the chat box so that we don't forget um, to talk about that in the end, right? Um, I would actually try to end this presentation as quickly as possible and spend more time with you on the questions, right? So if you have any questions, you have any concerns, you have any arguments, drop that in the chat box. Now, moving on. What is it in reality, the automation life cycle, right? And how does that affect? How does hyper automation really affect? You you know RPA. I am talking to you with an assumption that you know RPA. What happens in RPA is that you take a process which is a business process, which is repetitive in nature, and a lot of people are manually doing the stuff. You would pick that process and you would automate it, right? That's what you do in RPA. And there are fundamentally three blocks, right? Three blocks or three stages in automation. One is the build stage itself, where you pick a design tool, whether it is UiPath Studio or is it is any other design tools. You pick a tool. That's the stage one, and you start using your existing knowledge, and you train the robots. You design the robots step by step. Open SAP, log into SAP, click this button, select the drop down, etc., etc. That is what is going to happen in a build stage. I'm sure you all know this already, and this is how it is happening as of yesterday. Then you also have some management tools. In UiPath, we call it as orchestrator. If somebody else calls as control panel, control room, etc., etc. Basically, you use these set of products or stage to ensure that what you have built in the previous stage, in the build stage, are going to be deployed on multiple machines, multiple robots, isn't it? Right? So you use that for creating queues, you use that for creating schedules, you use it for monitoring what's happening on each robot, etc., etc. So that's the stage that is already there in RPA. Now the another stage is the run stage itself, the run components, which is the small piece of software that is going to be installed on the desktop, which is going to execute the tasks, right? We call that as robots, right? Some people call it as execution engines, etc. So these three things already existed, right? I'm sure you are able to connect to this concept. The terminology might be different, but essentially the architecture and the life cycle is about three things. You build it, you deploy it somewhere using orchestrator or any other web interfaces, and then you push that onto an execution target, and it executes on that desktop. It could be a desktop, it could be a virtual machine, it could be an attended robot where the user is triggering the robot by themselves, or it could be an unattended robot which executes without any human intervention, right? I hope you are with me until now. If you have any questions, please drop that. I will also quickly check there's something in yeah, cool. I see one question on Industry 4.0. Probably will pick that up. If you have any questions related to this particular structure, architecture, just drop that in the chat window. Okay, cool. I see none. So now let's move on. Let's move on to see what happens when you introduce hyper automation into the existing RPA ecosystem, right? So you've been able to do automations very well for the last 2-3 years with the help of these three components, these three stages. Now with hyper automation, what we said is that we need to do more. So how do we do more? First question that comes to my mind is that I have already built 10 robots. How do I find the 11th robot? How do I find the 12th robot? How do I find the 13th robot, right? So for that, what we do is we bring another stage in the component, right? And that's called as discover. So the discover stage is the stage where you identify automation, where you identify the automation opportunities. And how could you do that in hyper automation? One way is to do bottoms up approach, right? Where you let your employees in the organization decide what needs to be automated. For that, we have a component or a product called as Automation Hub, which could create a pipeline, which could create a pipeline of automation for you, right? Why is this important? Because as I told you, scale is important. Hyper automation is about automating more ideas, more automations. So Automation Hub becomes that repository, a place where you could have a visualization of end-to-end processes everywhere, and people from within the organization can suggest, you know what, I do this activity every day repeatedly, and I have 20 colleagues who does the same stuff, and I think it makes sense to automate this. So that could be one part of the discovery. The second part of the discovery is actually being able to capture that. We know as a fact that a lot of customers that we talk to would not have a SOP, right? They probably don't have the latest ways in which they do the process. Since they don't know that, you as a developer or a business analyst, or as a team which is developing solutions for your customers, whether it is internally or externally, have to spend so much time translating your business needs, right? So task capture, what it does is it basically looks into the tasks that the user is currently doing on the machine, and it captures everything just like a recording wizard, and it generates you a PDD, process definition document. So why is this important again? The ideas that you have captured can be easily translated to PDD or process definition documents, and that helps you go through the development cycle faster. Your pre-development stages are going to be much faster with the help of capture. Then we have process mining. This is interesting, right? So process mining is the ability to look at your existing applications, logs, databases, and get you a end-to-end visualization. Let me tell you that process mining in itself is a huge industry which has about uh, uh, $1 billion already in revenue, right? So process mining, adding that with RPA, which is actually supplementing RPA, it will help you identify much more processes in your organization, gives you an overall picture of what's happening in my finance department. And in finance department, there are 10 things that are happening. One is your AP, another is your AR, there is P2P, then order to cash. You see the entire process and select bits and pieces of it or the entire process to automate, because it shows the automation potential. And complementing to that is task mining. Task mining could be something which will be on the machine of the users, and then it does exactly the same task by giving you a picturization or visualization of processes, right? So that's discover as the part. I will look at some questions. So is Celonis is a tool? Does it work where event logs are not enabled? So while we are talking about process mining, Celonis is one such amazing tool, which is one of the leaders in process mining category, right? It does do the exactly same task as process mining that I was explaining, but if the logs are not enabled, no, it could not, it will not have enough data to understand the pattern. Logs is an important, very important aspect of process mining. And then it has to happen not only at a specific module, but it has to happen at an application. Is AI fabric related to hyperautomation? I will get to that. I will get to that question. Cool. We understood that build, manage, and run were the stages in automation that you already knew in RPA. And then we are adding one more component, which is the discover part. Okay. Next, going to the next step. We discovered, we built, we managed, we are running. What happens next, right? In hyperautomation, we bring in another stage, which is called as an engage stage. Until now, the automations that were running were typically running without any supervision, which is called as unattended robots, or it used to be triggered by a human on the machine, which is called as an attended robot. But there was not so much bi-directional communication between the robots and the humans. So to bring human in the loop, we have engage as a system, as a phase that typically lets you create a communication, a bi-directional communication between the robot and the user, thereby letting you bring the human in the loop, right? And long running workflows. So what do I mean is that assume that a robot is running on a machine, and it is set to run every day at 8 in the morning, and it is processing some invoices in the background. At one point in time, it has an exception, right? A technical exception, but it has a business exception, and it is not able to process that, and it is not trained to do what. So what it could do is that that particular invoice, that particular transaction, the robot can create as a task and give it to the user. The user can look at that, take action, correct, add some more input, whatever it is, at his convenience. And the robot, in the meantime, can go ahead and execute next transactions in its queue or pick another task. Right? That's the beauty of bringing Action Center in the picture, where the robot is running. What robot does? It gets an exception. Instead of waiting for anything, it pauses there. It pauses the transaction there, sends it to the user, picks up the next task, and keeps on executing. Whenever there is an input from the user that he has corrected or she has corrected, the robot can exactly pick that point and start executing. Right? That's the beauty of Action Center, and that's what we mean by engaging. The other way of doing it, when it is on the own machine, on their own machine, as an attended robot, is that we have created a picture-in-picture mode that's available in many products as well now. What it does is that you keep working on your machine, the user keeps on working on the machine. On the right side, on the other side, the robot creates a new session, and then you can see the entire new desktop that is created by the robot, and it is keep on executing. And the moment you want to take control of it, you can go ahead and take control of that and then give it back to the robot. So what I'm trying to bring at here in the engage mode is that there is more seamless communication and collaboration between the user and the robot, which earlier wasn't there. Correct? Why is this important in the in hyperautomation? Is because you will now get ability to do extremely complex tasks, right? Tasks that you cannot create the logic immediately. You need human intervention. You need that human supervision. Those things can be done with these stages in the products, right? I will see if there are any questions on this. Okay, seems we are good. Go to the next one. Okay, we discussed that we know build, manage, run, discovered, and you're also engaged. Then what is the next thing that comes in hyperautomation? How do you ensure that everything that you are doing are able are visible? You are able to justify your ROI, etc. That happens with the help of analytics, right? And we call that zone or stage as measure. So what typically happens is that the robots that are running in your organization, all the operational data points and the business data points that you might have created per process, and the outcomes, the errors, the exceptions, the success rate, everything is now visible. So there is visualization that is added, right? So what typically is going to happen is that when you have 25 robots, and if you want to know how many robots are actually being used at any given point in time, what is their utilization? Are they working 16 hours a day? Are they working 20 hours a day? Are they working 25 hours a day? That's not possible, right? It can work only 24. So you get a picture of all those things, and then you can translate that to the business impact. If a robot is working for 6 hours a day compared to humans working for 8 hours a day, what is the benefit? What is the savings? What is the FTE savings? What is the dollar savings? How many hours did we save? How did the process improve from as is, right? So all those visibility that you get in the insights, in the analytics stage of it, that kind of completes the entire automation life cycle, correct? Looking at some of the robots which are underutilized, that can help you trigger more automations and you discover more automation possibilities, right? So that's the end-to-end automation life cycle in the prisms of hyper automation. Now I will also talk a bit, while I did prioritize the new things that are slightly difficult to comprehend, I will also talk about some of the improvements that will lead for you to become uh, more cognitive process, for you to select more uh, AI related components, which is AI fabric. I will get to that, and also some other improvements which will help you increase the efficiency, whether it is in terms of execution or in terms of development, right? Cloud is one such aspect of starting your automations faster. Cloud is taking a lot more traction these days. While there are a lot of hurdles to begin with your infrastructure, your automation cloud can get started in minutes. A lot of RPA vendors have started to provide cloud offering, so you need not bother about infrastructure, installation, this server, databases, etc. Rather, you get started quickly. That's the cloud. Specifically to UiPath, we have launched Studio X as a product, which will help more people to use, more people to create automation instead of having dependency only on developers. So this is a product which is like low code, no code kind of a product, which is based on Excel, and any business user, irrespective of having um, technical expertise, can use this, thereby creating more and more automations, right? Everybody can create one robot for every person. Every person can build their own robot. That's also an improvement in the number of things that you could do. And if you remember the first slide about hyperautomation, it did talk about API integrations. While RPA that we have seen is more or less UI automation, there is a necessity of having API integrations as well, right? To do things efficiently, to do things faster. Instead of going to 10 screens on UI, if you have a Salesforce connector to do a specific task, like creating an opportunity in Salesforce, you could use that API and that helps you save a lot of time, isn't it? A lot of time to build, a lot of time to test, and a lot of time during execution. So there are hundreds and hundreds of integrations that are available in our marketplaces in various RPA vendors. The other innovation that helps you do things faster and more complex stuff is the document and understanding capability, where you have when you have multiple types of data as an input, and if it is not structured or semi-structured, you use document understanding capability, which will extract data even without you having to train the templates, right? So it can be combination of structured and semi-structured and unstructured data, and then the document understanding capability with the help of ML extracts it for you. And then it also has a human in the loop or validation station, which will help you um, train the machine learning model on a daily basis. Whenever there is a new rule, whenever there is something that the robot hasn't captured well, you can train. There is a continuous learning aspect in RPA with the help of document understanding. Now coming on to something of much larger interest, maybe is about AI fabric. So while there is a lot of AI already that we have discussed, though I did not explicitly specify, in process mining, we use AI to analyze pattern, to create that visualization, to scientifically discover what is a good automation possibility. In task mining, we use AI. In document understanding, we use machine learning models. If that is not enough, and if you have more specific AI requirement, what you could do is you go ahead and get the data scientists to create the machine learning models, and AI fabric acts as a platform which helps you deploy and thereby consume your machine learning models, right? So for an RPA developer, it is going to be just drag and drop, just like you do currently for any of the UI activities that you do. So with the help of AI fabric, you will be able to deploy machine learning models, NLP models, whatever AI component, AI skill, cognitive skill that you want to add to the robot. You could do it on the AI fabric platform. And for your RPA side of development, you can consume it in the studio just with a drag and drop. You specify the skill, and then you can use that skill, even if the RPA developer does not understand machine learning, right? So thereby you're increasing the complexity, increasing the level of things that you could do with RPA. I see a couple of questions. Faizan, if you could please elaborate what OEE do you mean by? Is it something related to the ROI? Is it something related to FTE? And how? So I can answer that if you specify what OEE is. Abhinav asks, does RPA ROI works in country like India where talent is not very expensive? I strongly believe RPA is no more game of FTEs. Unfortunately, some RPA vendors um, still treat RPA as something to reduce manual workforce, to save money. It's not necessarily. Look, we are talking about complex processes. We are talking about saving errors, right? If a robot does a task, it does it faster, it does it better. So the ROI is not necessarily in dollars, right? It is very much related to how efficiently you do a process, because at the end of the day, customers satisfaction is the key, right? So if I am an end customer of a bank, and if my bank takes 2 days to update my address, if it is done by a human, versus if there is a robot which can do your KYC in 5 minutes, what's what is better for the bank, right? So of course, the ROI is not necessarily only in terms of dollars, but it is increasing customer efficiency, customer satisfaction, satisfaction of your own employees, so that they can focus more on the value added activities. So I hate to burst the myth, but RPA is not a game of FTE savings. That unfortunately was a perception created by some of the RPA vendors who started earlier, because BPOs were the biggest consumer of RPA in the beginning. Now you go to media, now you go to telecommunications, now you go to healthcare, now you go to government agencies. Everybody is using RPA, so it's beyond the BPO, where FTE cost is the only motivation for RPA. It's much bigger, much beyond than that, and hence in India, yes, is going to be a place where RPA adoption is going to be higher. Traditionally, it had been only the GIC companies which were automating, but I, I I can actually tell you that there are more than 100 domestic companies of India who are using RPA at this point in time, including some of the government agencies, including some of the big uh, uh, multinationals out of India, right? Great. If we have built too many things, you have to also test. We have test suite, which will ensure that all the automations that you have developed are also going to be tested well. Um, and it also helps you identify the errors, and you can make a continuous testing. Even if there is a small change in the process that you have deployed, you could use these testing suite to automatically check before you push it onto production or the change requests, right? So that's pretty much on the life cycle and the various stages. As I told you, hyper automation is your RPA that you already know, maybe until here. This is something that you already knew. This probably is core RPA, plus complementing and supplementing technologies, which has increased the scope by discovering more automations. You understand more processes, you engage your users, and then you measure the entire life cycle, entire visualization, which feeds into more and more of automations, right? That's mostly from me. I think I'm doing well on time. I have still 10 minutes for me to take questions.
Thank you, Tejas. That was a wonderful presentation. This is Abhinav here, and thank you for joining us today. I know you have a very busy schedule.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me here. I hope this did not fly over head. I mean, I started with the assumption that a lot of us in the call knows what is RPA, but yes, it was good that
Yeah,
I.
yeah. So most of our people are in some way related to RPA. Either they are programmers, developers, or they want to learn RPA. Tejas, I have one simple question. It's very rather simple one, but I would like you to answer that because it is an answer that I've been seeking for some time. Tejas, can RPA tool like let us say UiPath can it process resumes? So let us say I am a recruiter. Okay, I get a lot of resumes, right? And I want to extract data like candidate's name, phone number, email ID, and some of the skills that they have listed in their resume. So now you can figure out that resumes have like different formats, like thousands of different formats, literally. Not two of them are same. So can UiPath can we train UiPath to extract the data that way?
Obviously, and it's a very good question, right? So we have to see it in two ways. One is the way to get into resume mode and what you extract out of it, and then what you do after it. So I see it as three things, right? One is get emails or say get resumes, right? Second is extract the skills or some values, right? And the third one is obviously what do you do with that skill, right? Maybe update your PeopleSoft, update your pipeline of candidates, update, right? So step one and step two is something that everybody understands is very simple task for an RPA things to do, because it is UI or Outlook or an API. Extracting the skills is something that you could do with RPA in actually every RPA, but it depends on how matured the RPA and how complex the skill set is. With UiPath, you could do very easily with document understanding. I told about a component called as document understanding, which can extract a lot of data, and then you can keep on training the model. Or you could also write a machine learning model using NLP, which extracts these data, and then you can use AI Fabric. So answer is out of the box. If you want, yes, there is in UiPath. If you want to be extremely specific, you can write your own machine learning models and put it using AI Fabric. So there are two ways, but probably the most preferred one is the AI Fabric route, because that gives you ability to be extremely specific about the type of skills that you want to extract, various values that you want to take it out, and prediction.
So mine case is a bit more simple. Like it's like this. Let us say a normal recruiter, what they do is they get resumes. They extract information like name, email ID, phone number. Okay, and then even some of the keywords, if they are there or not. Let us say I'm a RP programmer, so my resume will have that RP developer or Blue Prism or UiPath or whatever, somewhere or other written there, right?
A simple document understanding must be enough.
Okay. No, the reason I asked this question was, because we see invoice processing is much more simpler if you look at it that way. There are only 4 or 5 things there, and there are only so many places in a document those 4 or 5 fields can go. But when we look at resumes like that, there are so many, there are thousands of ways that they can get written, and they are not always even structured. Some can be structured, some can be semi-structured, some can be unstructured.
True. It's extremely semi-structured, or probably it's I would still call it as a semi-structured data. What I will do is that I think it's a good question, and I'm sure a lot of people will benefit if there is a use case that we produce and make it available soon. So I will take that point to create some assets and contents available on our platform on how to use document understanding specifically for this use case, if that's
all right. So guys, if you have any more questions, please just type. Rajesh is asking something. Rajesh, is that a question or a comment? You can unmute your mic, Rajesh.
Okay, so Rajesh's question is couple of complex use cases which involve hyper automation process approaches like task mining. Okay, so Probably he needs a couple of examples if he wants to understand. Okay, we'll start with the one that we are currently talking about, right? The entire finance P2P department. You start with process mining, realize what are the automations that you could do, followed by you build an invoice processing using document and create a machine learning model which can identify non-PO invoices, right? Because that is extremely difficult for somebody to understand and correlate the fields in SAP, right? And then it goes all the way until the measure. The other use case that I can quote immediately is in the sector of healthcare. We actually recently did this in US, where we took customers' historic data because we are in the times of pandemic, right? So we ran through process mining to understand the existing systems, applications, and data, and how applications are talking to each other. And then we figured out top four candidates for automation which has highest ROI potential. And we started using OCR plus AI engine to recognize handwritten comments and some medical instructions that were there, and that was created as a daily report for every cases that were coming, right? That's another use case that I can think of. And as a question here that I see, how much competition is UiPath facing with RPAs? I don't necessarily see anybody really as a competition who are free open source companies. I do see that a lot of companies who are in the leadership position offering community license like we do, but there is an enterprise support. Unless there is an enterprise support, I don't think it is going to be adopted as much as the enterprise licenses are going to be, at least in the region that I look for in APAC and in whole of APAC, which includes Japan, ANZ, Southeast Asia, etc. I haven't come across a good competition which is an open source technology. Because at the end of the day, you know what, it's about implementation. You might get the software free. Say for example, you get Adobe Photoshop for free, but till the time you do not know how to use it, or there is no expertise available already, that's the problem with the enterprise. I think Rita, you asked me a question. Please go on.
No, I was like taking the questions, so you already answered. So, is there any other questions anyone wants to ask? They can unmute their mic and ask directly. So, maybe there's now no more questions. So, thank you, Tejus, for the wonderful session. It was really informative.
Sure.
And yeah.
Great.
So,
Thanks for having me, guys. If you have any further questions, you can please reach out to RPA School. I'm sure they'll let me know. Or these are some of my handles. You can reach me in this place as well.